Nicki makes a lot of cash. Not as much as Michael Dell.
Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lennon. Nicki Minaj need to be with about Chris Hansen. She needs to be with.
Nicki Minaj has many, many issues that would lead one to believe that those issues are possibly the reason that she's cozying up to MAGA.
Because she's a black woman, or at least I thought she was. She clearly has black children. So are you saying you don't mind your children growing up in a society where they cannot be taught black?
Something cracked inside hip-hop culture, and it wasn't quiet about it. This wasn't a tweet, not a headline, and not some messy political back and forth. This was deeper than that. This was about betrayal. When someone builds an empire off black culture, speaks loudly against oppression, then suddenly starts applauding the same system they once called out, people don't just feel confused, they feel played. And that tension finally exploded under bright lights with a mic in one hand and zero fear in the other. Katt Williams didn't warm up. No jokes, no cushion. He went straight for the pressure point. He asked the question nobody wanted to say out loud. How does a black immigrant woman, raising black children, end up standing beside a movement accused of erasing black history, silencing black pain, and brushing off black suffering as overreaction? This wasn't a debate, it was a reckoning. The internet remembers everything. It remembers when she called Trump evil. It remembers when she got emotional talking about immigrant families being torn apart. It remembers when she said she'd never jump on that bandwagon. So what changed? Belief or benefit? As Katt peeled back each layer, the room didn't laugh. It froze. This wasn't comedy. It was an autopsy. Every clip replayed made the silence heavier. Every contradiction hit harder. And one truth kept creeping in. This wasn't growth. This wasn't confusion. This looked like calculation. Like, by the time the mic came back to his mouth, the real question wasn't whether Nicki Minaj switched sides. It was whether she sold out or if this was always the move. From the second Katt stepped on stage, the energy felt off. This wasn't entertainment. This was confrontation. He didn't pace, didn't grin, didn't charm the crowd. He locked in and pointed straight at the fracture line the moment the culture cracked.
Hey guys, I'm with my favorite president, the best president of all time.
To him, this wasn't political. It was personal. He reminded everyone who Nicki used to be. Not the brand, not the icon, the voice, the woman who defended immigrants, the artist who spoke on injustice, the public figure who made it clear she'd never align with Trump or anything tied to him. According to Katt, that promise didn't fade. It flipped. What rattled the room wasn't just the switch, it was the speed. One moment, condemnation. Next moment, applause. One moment, outrage. Next moment, alignment. Katt let the question hang heavy. What changes faster, beliefs or benefits? He laid out the contradiction without screaming it. A black immigrant woman, black children, a career built on black expression, yet support for a movement often accused of minimizing black history, dismissing racial trauma, and labeling centuries of suffering as exaggeration. Katt didn't accuse. He stacked reminders. These debates weren't abstract. They had real consequences. And when Nicki chose a side, intentionally or not, she became part of those consequences. Then came the receipts. Old interviews, past statements, moments when she called Trump evil, when she spoke emotionally about families being torn apart, when she promised she'd never ride that wave. According to Katt, this wasn't evolution, it was abandonment. The room didn't erupt, it went silent. That silence spoke louder than applause ever could. Katt didn't escalate, he validated. He made it clear the disappointment wasn't isolated. People across the culture were feeling the same way, quietly and publicly. Then another voice entered, not loud, not angry, just tired. That clip didn't scream, it sighed. And in that sigh was collective heartbreak. Nobody tried to erase Nicki's legacy or deny her influence. They did something worse, they stopped believing. Disappointment cuts deeper than outrage because outrage still cares. Katt leaned into that. He reminded the crowd that disappointment comes from expectation, from fans who defended her, from communities that lifted her voice before it was profitable. He pushed further when politics and family entered the conversation, when comments shifted from opinion to messaging. That's when public figures like D.L. Hughley pushed back, not gently, but publicly. Katt didn't repeat jokes. He summed up the feeling. If you lecture the public about values, you don't get to dodge the mess in your own backyard. The crowd laughed, but it was tense. Because jokes only land when they hit something real. Then Katt shifted again. He brought up the LGBTQ+ community, not as a side note, but as a foundation. He reminded everyone that Nicki's rise was powered by fans who saw her as a symbol of freedom and expression. Now, critics say that same community feels dismissed. To Katt, that wasn't politics. That was abandonment. He said the word out loud. Sold out. The reaction was instant. The applause wasn't joyful. It was sharp, like self-defense. Katt didn't linger. He moved to the moment that turned debate into confrontation, the Don Lemon exchange. He explained how attacking critics exposed a pattern. Question her shift, become the enemy. Pushback became persecution. And according to Katt, that kind of defensiveness doesn't scream confidence, it screams fragility. And that's where part one closed, not with disappointment, but with fury.
Look, this is what I'll say to Nicki Minaj. I normally don't respond to things like this, but, F it. I'm going to do it this time. I think Nicki Minaj has made it very clear how she feels about African Americans in this country. For I don't think she's one of them, obviously. And she should, under Trump's rules, she should be deported because I don't think, reportedly, that she is a legal citizen here. She is undocumented. And so she has shown her disdain for African Americans. So why are you supporting her? Why are you buying her records? She's also supporting, I have lots of gay friends who love Nicki Minaj. Why are you supporting?
Katt let the silence stretch before closing part one with his most unsettling thought yet. He told the crowd that when relevance starts slipping, power suddenly looks real attractive. When applause fades, alliances harden. And movements like MAGA don't just pull in true believers, they also pull in opportunity seekers. He leaned closer to the mic, lowered his voice, and dropped a question that refused to stay on the stage. Was this belief or was it business? As the lights dimmed, one thing felt obvious. This story wasn't over. The doubt had already taken root. What began as disappointment now mutated into something heavier, a confrontation with consequences. Because when power shifts, silence turns into complicity. When public figures pivot, the ripple doesn't stay contained. Katt felt that energy. He didn't get louder. He got sharper. His voice narrowed, and the tone shifted from observation to indictment.
We love her music. I've spoken to her several times. Collectively, I feel like we were a little bit disappointed with her, but I feel like she needs to spend a lot of time with Mr. Bruce Springsteen. She needs to go sit on his lap and let him speak some words of wisdom to her heart. Because
He reminded the crowd that freedom of opinion comes with a catch. Influence multiplies impact. A celebrity doesn't just speak, they signal. And when that signal lines up with a movement accused of dismissing Black pain and marginalizing queer voices, fallout is unavoidable. Katt didn't accuse Nicki Minaj of bad intent. He accused her of awareness. He said she knew how her words would land, that her platform erased the possibility of neutrality. Once you step into politics, especially politics tied to identity, you inherit the consequences whether you want them or not. Then he brought up the moment everything escalated. The church scene, the Don Lemon exchange. According to Katt, the backlash wasn't about what was said, but how criticism was handled. Instead of engaging, she attacked. Instead of clarifying, she deflected. Instead of addressing substance, she went after the messenger. That's where D.L. Hughley entered the story, not as a comedian, but as a mirror. The crowd laughed, then froze, because D.L.'s words weren't just jokes. They were indictments wrapped in humor. He wasn't debating ideology, he was exposing contradiction. Katt didn't repeat the punchline, he explained the punch. When someone preaches values publicly, their private associations come under the spotlight. Moral authority isn't claimed, it's earned, and once it's questioned, it can't be rebuilt through deflection. He framed DL's comments not as cruelty, but as context. Outrage doesn't erase reality, and reality was getting harder to dodge. The crowd didn't get restless, they got alert. That's when Katt pivoted again, away from jokes, away from personal beefs, toward the machinery behind the shift. What if this wasn't random? What if this wasn't impulsive? What if this wasn't even personal? Then he dropped the theory that chilled the room. Nicki Minaj didn't just choose MAGA, MAGA chose her. The words didn't land, they sank. Katt paused, then unpacked it slowly. Movements don't just spread ideas, they recruit symbols, faces that soften narratives, voices that legitimize positions people might otherwise reject. When one symbol loses value, another gets elevated, not as a leader, but as cover. Katt made one thing clear. This wasn't about Nicki lacking power. It was about how power recognizes opportunity. Influence becomes currency. Alignment isn't always ideological. Sometimes it's transactional. Political theater, cultural stakes. She didn't need to write policy. She didn't need rallies. All she had to do was stand there, visible, vocal, validated. Suddenly, the movement could point and say, see, even she agrees. The audience didn't cheer. They processed. Katt said tokenization isn't accidental, it's strategic, especially when race, celebrity, and controversy collide. In his view, Nicki checked every box. Global reach, cultural credibility, built-in controversy, a loyal fan base. Perfect. He reminded the crowd that Candace Owens didn't fall out of favor for being conservative. She fell because she became uncontrollable. She disrupted narratives instead of reinforcing them. Nicki, under this framing, did the opposite. She stayed on script. Then Katt delivered the line that silenced the room. This isn't representation, this is replacement. He said it calmly, and that calm made it hit harder. Movements don't care about consistency, they care about compliance, about who delivers the message without questioning the machine behind it. Katt didn't say Nicki was forced, he said she was selected. And selection comes with perks: protection, amplification, forgiveness.
Whole scene that unfolded at this church.
Right.
You saw this, right? Nicki Minaj going after Don Lemon. You see this, like for
Nicki Minaj,
for reporting
what
it.
was so funny to me, people hate, it's so funny how many on the right hate, they hate transgender and gay people more than they do pedophiles. That's amazing to me. Nicki don't need to worry about Don. She need to be with damn Don Lemon, Nicki Minaj.
But it also comes with a price. Once you're the face, you absorb the backlash. Critics stop debating policy and start confronting you. He circled back to the audience. The speed of the shift, the defensiveness toward critics, the silence toward supporters who felt betrayed, the alignment with narratives once condemned. He didn't say it was wrong, he said it was revealing. Leaning into the mic one last time, Katt lowered his voice like he was naming something everyone already felt. When belief changes overnight, he said, it's usually not belief. The lights dimmed, and the question left hanging wasn't whether Nicki Minaj believed in MAGA. It was whether MAGA believed in her, or just needed her, and whether she understood the cost. Because there are moments when debate ends and memory begins, when opinions turn into historical markers. Katt Williams knew that. And that's when his tone shifted one final time, not louder, but heavier. Everything so far, the flip, the backlash, the alliances, the symbolism, all of it pointed to one moment, one appearance, one statement that many felt crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The Turning Point USA event marked the moment everything snapped into focus. Katt described it as the shift from confusion to conviction, where speculation died and clarity took over. This wasn't said in anger. It wasn't pressure talk. It was delivered calmly, on a stage with applause waiting. According to critics, this wasn't Nicki reacting. This was Nicki choosing. Katt replayed the argument being circulated, that teaching Black history makes white children uncomfortable, that emphasizing Black pride somehow diminishes others, that telling the truth about America's past creates imbalance. He paused, then asked the question that split the room in half. If truth makes someone uncomfortable, who is that truth really protecting? He reminded the crowd that Black history isn't optional. It isn't propaganda. It isn't revenge. It's context. And when context is removed, it doesn't disappear. It distorts. Katt made it clear people weren't upset because Nicki had an opinion. They were upset because of what that opinion erased. That's when the final voice entered. Not with humor, not with sarcasm, but with weight. The room didn't react. It absorbed. This wasn't a viral moment. This was a challenge to logic itself. Dr. Umar wasn't debating policy. He was questioning identity, asking whether proximity to power had overridden responsibility to truth.
That Donald Trump and the conservative movement in this country selected Nicki Minaj because they needed a replacement for Candace Owens. Remember, Candace Owens has fallen out of favor with the Republican Party and the mainstream conservative white agenda because she's now exposing the Zionist control of the conservative movement and of the United States government. In fact, Art, I would argue that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I believe, by the Zionist movement. We're going to distance ourselves from Candace, and this is Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and the mainstream white conservative movement. We got to find another Black woman. We got to find another Black woman who can compete with Candace Owens nationally and internationally to bring attention away from Candace Owens, who is highlighting the Israeli influence on American politics.
Katt explained why that clip landed so hard. Nicki isn't just famous, she's a mother, a black mother, raising black children in a world that already struggles to tell them who they are without distortion. Critics argue that when someone in that position downplays history, the message travels far beyond politics. It tells children which parts of themselves are negotiable. No one was asking Nicki to be an activist. No one was demanding perfection. But when influence meets education, silence becomes a stance and statements become legacy. Teaching history isn't about blame, it's about accuracy. And accuracy, according to critics, was exactly what her remarks put at risk. That's where outrage faded into something quieter. Mourning. Katt called it cultural grief. The moment fans realized someone they defended no longer stood for what they believed. When admiration turns into distance and loyalty becomes conditional. Social media, he said, wasn't acting as a mob. It was acting as a mirror. People weren't just criticizing Nicki, they were warning each other, turning her into a case study, a cautionary tale about what happens when relevance slips and power becomes tempting.
To the effect that it's not just that we tell black children to feel proud of themselves, but it's like we're doing that, and at the same time, we're telling other children not to feel proud of themselves. And so I guess she was alluding to this false narrative that the conservatives are putting out there, that teaching black children black history and teaching white children the true history of America is somehow going to make white children feel bad about themselves. That bothered me.
Katt framed it carefully. Not everyone aligns with MAGA out of belief. Some do it because the spotlight is guaranteed, the defense is aggressive, and the loyalty is loud. Katt didn't say Nicki needed saving. He said she made a decision, and decisions don't need defending, they need accountability. When people claim harm was misunderstood or taken out of context, Katt shut that down with one sentence: context doesn't change impact. The room stayed silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore. Katt walked the audience through the final shift from disbelief to acceptance. Nicki Minaj wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't manipulated. She was strategic. He said it slowly so no one could twist it later. She's not confused. She's calculated. And with that, the last illusion collapsed. Katt leaned in, almost whispering, "This isn't belief. This is business." The lights dimmed, and the story ended without answers, but with a reckoning. Because the final question wasn't whether Nicki Minaj believes in MAGA, it was whether MAGA believes in her or just needs her. Was she reading a script or helping write one? This wasn't a bad quote. It wasn't internet drama. It was trust snapping in real time. And when that kind of trust breaks, it doesn't quietly come back. For years, people gave the benefit of the doubt because legacy matters. But this moment erased that shield. This wasn't confusion, it was choice. A choice to stand with power instead of people. A choice to trade history for comfort. A choice to accept applause from spaces that once rejected everything she claimed to represent. And that's why it hurts more than anger ever could. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies. Now the culture isn't debating, it's watching. Waiting to see if this was belief or a calculated performance dressed up as patriotism and profit. Because once the mask slips, it never fully goes back on. And the silence that follows isn't confusion, it's recognition. If this made you think, hit like, share it, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Drop your honest thoughts below, and we'll see you in the next video.